I think there are a number of ways of responding to that. The first is to anticipate what our visitors, our audiences are going to want in the future. And I think there's some really important new trends emerging. Use of social media, what will that mean for the way that museums engage with their audiences? The use of smartphones and technologies, how much technology will we need to purchase and put in the galleries versus how much we can deliver to people's own handheld devices. So some really important things there. But really for me, it's about engaging with what visitors want. And also from the Natural History Museum's point of view, we're of course a place of public engagement with science, and that public engagement with science is underpinned and made credible by the scientific research that we do. Most people in the UK know the Natural History Museum as that wonderful Victorian building with the dinosaurs, and they completely ignore the fact that at least half of our money is spent on doing science. And it's our fault, because typically we've done all of that science behind closed doors in closed collection spaces that people can't see into, and labs that aren't open to the public, or no glass walls. And with our Darwin Centre, which we opened 2.5 years ago, we said, you know what, we should change that. Let's show the public what we do behind the scenes. Let's show them why we have these enormous natural history collections. Let's tell them about the research that we do using those collections, and why the research that we do is relevant to their daily lives. So for the next 15, 20 years, I think the journey that we will be on at the Natural History Museum is to show people why what we do is relevant, why it's important and relevant to their daily lives. And you can transmit that story across any museum. I mean, museums are about engaging people with their sense of purpose and sense of place. So from my perspective, whether it's a museum of archaeology, which is where we are now, or it's a museum of fine art and design, or it's a museum about natural history, there are stories that can be told using the collections that have a modern relevance. And we've got to find ways of giving those stories that modern relevance. New media is going to be really important, but you know, the wonderful thing about museums is we have real objects, and there is nothing like seeing the real object. The look on a school child's face, or the wonderment of seeing a real object. One of the things that we'd like to do with VIP visitors to the museum is take them behind the scenes, and they can hold an enormous diamond, an uncut diamond in one hand, and a piece of Mars in the other hand. And the sense of wonder that they have of just those real objects is extraordinary. And that's what we want to do. We want to use the real objects to tell important stories and to get people to engage with the objects. I mean, an interesting development for us is that we're a scientific institution, so we interpret our collections using science. But of course, many of our objects are very old. They represent, you know, colonial expeditions all around the world. And for some of those objects, there are incredible stories of economic interest, or of social or religious significance. So there's a whole new way of interpreting those collections and telling new stories. What's really interesting is the way that social media are already having a significant impact. So we already have to have staff who are watching blogs, Twitter, to see what people are saying about the museum. So we get very instant feedback from visitors, from others who are engaging with things that the museum does. And that's really interesting. And we can turn it into a positive. I mean, we're now so popular a venue that on our busiest days we have long queues to get in the museum. But we ourselves use Twitter to update people on how long the queues are going to be, and how they can get in more quickly, so help them manage their time. So really effective use of social media in a very small but quite practical way. I mean, at the moment, we are working our way through devising a new digital strategy for the museum. The problem with technology is anticipating the future. You don't want to invest in the wrong technology. You don't want to invest in Betamax if VHS is going to be the format of choice. So for us, we're watching very carefully. You don't want to be right at the cutting edge of developments. You need to be slightly behind the curve. You want to learn from other people's mistakes, but make early investment in the right things. I mean, I believe that social media will become a very important channel of communication with our audiences. I also think that the way that we invest in technology inside the museum will change. I think the days of touchscreens, fixed devices as part of exhibits is going to change. They're going to have to be much more responsive to the fact that people have smartphones, which are possible devices that we can engage with. I mean, it'll reduce our costs in terms of technology. We won't be buying new technology every 3 years. And the customer, the visitor, will have that cost because they will want to keep their smartphone up to date. But we will need to invest a lot of money in the technology to send those messages and get that messaging right. We'll have to develop apps, we'll have to put wireless technology in all the galleries. So a big investment, but I think that's a future-proofed investment, whereas buying touchscreens and technology that sits there in the galleries is a 3-year investment, and then you throw it away and start again. The members of the National Museum Directors Conference represent organisations that are very diverse in their subject matter. We do have areas of common interest. I mean, we are funded by government, we're subjected to the laws of the land. A case in point, in our last budget, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, our head of finance in government, announced some changes to tax relief, introduced a cap on the tax relief on charitable giving. At a time when the government is encouraging institutions like ours to generate more of their income from philanthropy. Now, this is completely counterintuitive, but the sector was able to come together and lobby very hard with other sectors within the charities in the UK to actually lobby government and say, actually, this is not a clever thing to do, because you're actually precluding people from making substantial donations to charity. And we've been able to reverse that. Literally, while I was on the day I left England for this trip, the news broke that the Chancellor of the Exchequer had done a U-turn and they were not going to implement that policy. So fantastic. But beyond what we do as an individual institution, I think over the next 15 to 20 years we will see international networks of museums linking together. And I'm certainly very keen to get an international network of natural history museums and other collection-based institutions like Botanic Gardens working together, making a more significant noise about issues such as what is the impact of climate change on the distribution of biodiversity, how is mankind exploiting natural resources, and can it be done more sustainably? So those really big, important environmental questions. And I think as a single institution we have a voice, but as a network of institutions we have a much louder voice, and a loud enough voice, I think, that we can begin to think about influencing government policy. And if you think about the large global environmental issues that we face as mankind, we're going to require political collaboration on a scale that's completely unprecedented if we're to resolve these issues. And I think networks of institutions like museums can really play a part in that.